Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the CJL Fireside Chat, interviewing some of the most fascinating, inspiring people, literally from around the world. We have a very special guest tonight. We've all heard of her. We know her books. Her reputation goes before her in an incredible way. There are very few people around the world who can bring together so many people from such diverse backgrounds. Literally, there are very few divides geographically on so many levels. And we thank you very much, Dr. Eger, for joining us tonight. It is really an honor and a pleasure, and I say this on behalf of everyone joining us here tonight. We look forward to hearing from you, to you sharing ideas, to shedding light, because, you know, in a nutshell, there are very, very few people who have transformed darkness into light. We talk about it, but in real life, the way you have done it is an inspiration to so many. And that is why we are all eager to hear from you tonight. Just a few words about Dr. Eger, who doesn't need much of an introduction. Obviously born in Hungary, had a normal life, a happy life, and in a way uneventful. But obviously that all changed. It changed with the Holocaust, and at the age of 16 years old, she was sent, in 1944, Dr. Eger was sent to Auschwitz, separated from her parents on arrival, and she endured, you know, we can say unimaginable experiences, including, I think, at the very beginning, to dance in front of the infamous Joseph Mengele. But I think what is more incredible about her story and what she will share with us tonight is it is not just that liberation from the Holocaust, it is not just the survival, but the way she went through a healing process which transformed her life. But as she says, not just her life. As a result of that healing process, it allowed her to illuminate and transform and bring so much positivity into a world, directly, indirectly, and obviously, as of late, with her books. Most importantly, well-known international bestseller, the book called The Choice. I can tell you something, there are very few books that you read which will transform your life in the way this one does. So that is The Choice, an international bestseller, and also more recently, a book called The Gift, 12 Lessons to Save Your Life. So that is a brief background about Dr. Eger. We will get straight into the questions because really we want to hear from her. I just want to start by saying, you know, just a few quotes from your book in the introduction. So you write that over time I learned that I could choose how to respond to the past. I can be miserable or I can be hopeful. I can be depressed or I can be happy. And obviously your theme is we always have that choice. My question to you is, it sounds very simple. Do we really have that choice? And why does it seem so difficult?
I think that we are people who end up doing the familiar. And even though we know it's really not in our best interest, we keep going back to the familiar. And I remember when Einstein said that the definition of insanity, that you keep doing the same things and you expect different results. I think that comes in everyone's life, and I'm hoping that this is what it's all about now, that people can take time out and take inventory of their lives. You see, Jewish people are very good at listening to their inner dialogue, and that inner dialogue can make a decision when you get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say that I love me. And self-love is self-care. It's not narcissistic. So everything begins, you know, our spirit is there when we are born, our spirit is there when we die. And so Auschwitz to me was a time of discovery of my inner resources when nothing came from the outside. When I arrived in Auschwitz and my parents ended up in a gas chamber, and I asked, when will I see my parents? And the couple looked at the chimney and said, your parents are burning there. You better talk about them in past tense. And my sister hugged me and she said, the spirit never dies. And for me to be here with you at the age of 93 and let you know that we don't seem to appreciate what we have many times until we lose it. And so I eat everything on my plate. It hurts me to throw away a piece of bread. My daughter always tells me in a restaurant, Mom, it's okay to leave food on your plate. But I keep going back and I ask you whether you're going to finish your food. And if not, either I eat it or I pack it up and I take it home. And so I think it's a good time today to give birth to the you that was meant to be, because we give up our true self early on. And my question is, when did your childhood end? And if a woman comes to me and tells me that she was sexually abused, but she cannot tell me because I was in Auschwitz, and my answer to her is, I knew the enemy. So we do not compare. We do not compare. But what is happening today is what was in Auschwitz. We didn't know what's going to happen next. And that's why we are today. We don't know what's going to happen next. When we took a shower, we didn't know whether gas or water is going to come out. This is a very difficult time. We are in a limbo. And I think it's a good time too, just like time out in football, that you regroup and redecide, that you don't go back. You have a new beginning. And the end of the year, you want to ask yourself, what am I holding on to? And what I'm going to be willing, that's a good word, willing to let go of. But you can't let go of anything unless you replace it with something else. So I'm your midwife today, and I'm going to ask you to really look at you, that you're ready to give birth to the you that was meant to be free.
Well, that's amazing. But let me ask you like this. It seems you talk about uncertainty. Obviously, yes. The uncertainty in the camps, the consequences of that uncertainty were much greater than any bit of uncertainty today. But if we can just focus on current times and the uncertainty that we are all facing, you say you have to hold on to something. How do you live with uncertainty? It's extremely debilitating. What do you hold on to that allows you to confront and deal with that uncertainty?
Hope. Hope. That you tell yourself, I don't like it, it's inconvenient, it's unfair, and it's temporary, and I can survive it. Not, rather than yes, but. I found, people ask me, where was God in Auschwitz? God was with me. God was guiding me from hatred to pity. I decided that they were the prisoners, not me. They took my blood many, many times. I couldn't yank my arm away. But when I asked him, why are you taking my blood? And he said, to aid the German soldiers so we can win the war and take over the world. I said to myself, you stupid idiot, with my blood, you're never going to win the war. There is Jewish humor that I truly adore, because in the ghetto, there was Sholem Aleichem. Let me tell you one thing Sholem Aleichem said. Why is the ocean water so salty? And the answer is because of all the herrings in it. And so I think to laugh at yourself is truly a mature, wonderful way to survive anything, to make a difference between reacting or responding. People who were reacted, they touched the guards and they were shot. So the fight and flee doesn't work. If you touch the barbed wires, you were electrocuted. So had to learn, like today, how to flow and do in our very limited capacity to use this time out as a rebirth, as a renaissance, because you may have given your childhood up to take care of a mom who had migraine headaches or a dad who was ill. So it's a good question to ask, actually, when did your childhood end? Because you may have been mommy's little boy, mommy's little man, but you don't realize that your childhood was taken away from you. The second question is, would you like to be married to you? And I think these are the two questions you may want to consider asking yourself. You know, where am I in my life? Because there is no crisis. There is only transition. There is no problem. There is only a challenge. So it's not what happens, it's what you do with it.
You say early on, again in that introduction, which is pretty fundamental in your journey of healing, people run away from the trauma.
Yes.
They run away, they're afraid to deal with it. And most people, certainly Holocaust survivors, because the pain was so great, that's what they did.
That's what I did.
You seemed, you know, over your lifetime, to have had the courage to embrace, you're right, to embrace that trauma. How do you do that? How does one do that?
I was fortunate enough to study psychology and began to work with 2 Vietnam veterans. I actually was one of the people who coined the word PTSD. It's really not a disorder. We pathologize too much. I think it's a reaction to a loss. Even now, 6 people who come back and they don't know how to really readjust, they take their lives. There are tremendous amount of suicide, amount of military who were not prepared for. And that's what happened. 2 things happened. We were put in a place we were not prepared for. We were told one thing and we found another. Now, let's pretend that your child picks up the phone and the child looks at you and says, "Daddy, it's for you." And you very quietly tell your child, "Tell him I'm not here." And the following week, you sit down with the family and we're gonna talk about people who say one thing and they do another. And your child is gonna say, "Oh, Dad." So children, again, don't do what we say, they do what they say. We are the role model to our children. I, unfortunately, went underground. When I came to America, I wanted to speak English without an accent. I went to school, and I went to school, and I went to school. But when I worked with these 2 Vietnam veterans, one of them was kind of like a fetal position. Why me? Why me? Blaming, blaming, blaming. By the way, when you blame, you're still a child. Children blame. And the other one said to me, "Hey, Doc, I'm sitting in a wheelchair. I'm so grateful. You know what? I can see the children's eyes much closer. I can see the flowers, and I'm sitting there like a biggest imposter. And I realized I cannot take them further than I have gone myself, and I went back to Auschwitz. And that's how I developed my theory, to revisit the places where you've been, to relive that experience. But you're not there, you're here with me. Children need to have a safe place. They can feel any feelings without the fear of being judged. And that's what I do. But I go through the valley of the shadow of death. I don't camp there. Because if I would live in hate and fear today, I would still be a prisoner and the hostage of the past. I live in a present, but I never forget the past. I never overcome the past. I came to terms with it. I call it my cherished wound. So this is what is important. We know that the opposite of depression is expression, because what comes out of your body doesn't make you ill. So if you have any secret, please share it. You have a good cry, you feel better.
So you talk about going back, confronting the trauma, going back to Auschwitz.
Yes.
When you go back, the pain is so intense, the injustice is so great.
Yes.
How do you deal with that injustice? How do you,
there is no
hate.
freedom. You have to really acknowledge that you have to go through the rage. But then you say, instead of why me, what now? I asked my sister to come with me because my mother told me in a cattle car, you know, honey, we don't know where we're going. We don't know what's going to happen. Just remember, no one can take away from you what you put here in your own mind. Today, I tell young people to see the Karate Kid, because the best power is brain power. And that's exactly what happened. So I asked my sister to come with me. And she told me I'm an idiot. She also told me I'm a masochist. How could I go back to that hell? And I tell you, that's the most positive thing I've ever done, to go back to that lion's den and look at that lion in the face and reclaim my innocence and assign the shame and guilt to the perpetrator and begin to forgive myself that I survived. It's not an overnight thing. I am reminded almost every day. I remember one day I went to have steak. It's called Ruth's Steakhouse. And I was walking on cobblestones. Immediately I was back as we were walking in Germany, and children were spitting at us and calling us pigs. You see, but it's temporary. I don't get stuck in it. And by the way, I ended up taking care of German families in a military hospital, and a little child jumps in my lap and calls me Oma. And I'm thinking, see, maybe there is everything temporary. And hopefully we can find also, we the Jewish people, our ancestors, that they were on that journey, on the desert, and guess what? They never gave up. And I carry that blood, and I want to be seeing to it that no matter what happens, it's easier to die than to live. And to be able to really be able to learn to respond, but not to react. Get off that automatic. I'm very selective who's going to get my anger. I don't give my power away so quickly. And this is what I tell children, that the bully is going to say, you are stupid. When you hear you say to yourself, I'm going to be dumped on. And the longer they talk, the more relaxed I become. And you take a deep breath and say to yourself, I'm practicing my low frustration tolerance level. So my name is not shrink. My name is stretch. So today I'm stretching your comfort zone, that you can look at your life partner and tell each other what you resent and what you appreciate, because what you appreciate one time, you're going to resent the other time. My late husband was a perfectionist, and he was always on time. And when we went to a party, I was getting ready, and he was already in the car. When are you going to be ready? You know? But you know what? When I had to be at the airport 5 o'clock in the morning, I knew I can count on him. So maybe this is a good time. So, you know, what do you resent? One time you appreciate the other time, and get to know one another, because we marry people who we don't know, like Romeo and Juliet. So see how you can really marry someone who's your soulmate, not the hot lover, because that cools off rapidly.
You know, one of the most inspiring statements in the book happens, I think it's the first night or the first week in Auschwitz, where you talk about the dance in front of Joseph Mengele. And if I can quote you, you say, I discover a piece of wisdom that I have never forgotten. Dr. Mengele is more pitiful than me. I am free, which he can never be. He is more of a prisoner than I am. That's your quote. Now, I mean, that is absolutely incredible insight, to feel free in Auschwitz. My question is, where does a thought like that come from? It's a crazy, crazy thought. In a good way, good crazy. Where does it come from? And secondly, why do you think it came to you? Not to most others.
Just a little bit about myself. I was born into a very talented family. Magda played the piano. My sister Clara played the Mendelssohn violin concerto when she was 6 years old, and my parents wanted a son. Guess what happened? I came along, and I think I was put in a family to be really the runt. When I was 3, I became cross-eyed. My sisters took me for a walk and blindfolded me, so no one would see what an ugly sister I was. They were singing Hungarian songs. I can still sing it to you. Then I'm so ugly that I'm never going to find a husband. My mother told me very seriously, I'm glad you have brains because you have no looks. I became, they call me the Anne Frank who didn't die. I started to study Latin and Greek and read the interpretation of dreams by Freud. But what I had, my mother took me to a ballet school. I had a wonderful ballet master who picked me up and told me that God built me in such a magnificent way that all my ecstasy has to come from inside out. And that's what happened when I discovered that if nothing comes from the outside, I can pretend and check out from here. And that's what happened in Auschwitz. I pretended the music was Tchaikovsky, and I was dancing the Romeo and Juliet at the Budapest Opera House. So at night, the Nazis could put me in the oven any minute. When we took a shower, we didn't know whether gas or water is going to come out. From minute to minute, we didn't know. So they could put me in a gas chamber, they would beat me, torture me, and yet they could never, ever murder my spirit. That's what I bring you today. That chutzpah, that way to look at the stimulus and the response. I cannot change the stimulus. People are going to tell you the Holocaust didn't exist. Ahmadinejad said that. But Ahmadinejad did not read Plato. I did. And Plato said you have to think of a lie, and it has to be a big one. And then you repeat it until people believe it. Did you know that Hitler came to America to learn how to deal with the people of color, so he could go back and do that with the Jewish people and calling them a pariah? I was told in Auschwitz, I'm cancer to society and I'm never going to get out of here alive. You see, but I never allowed them. I never allowed them even today. Don't allow other people to get to you. You just say, thank you for your opinion. It takes two to fight. It takes one to stop it. When someone says, why, don't say because. Don't ask, how are you? People lie, fine. You know, I was professor of psychology, and one of the students said, you know, in America, people are hearing, but they're not listening. And I said, okay, let's check it out. Tomorrow morning, you're going to pick up your books, and someone is going to say, hi, how are you? And you say, my mother died this morning. Oh, great. I'll see you this afternoon. People are hearing, but not listening. I think it's very important to listen to our voices, to be congruent. Men always want to understand things because your corpus callosum is different than mine. That's why we call men thick-headed. You want to understand, but we want to speak the heart language. Sounds like you're sad about that. Sounds like you're angry about it. Oh, yes, I'm mad as hell. You see, so you create an environment that people can feel any feelings without the fear of being judged. There is no right feeling or wrong feeling. There is only my feeling. So this is what I do. This is what I do. It's about grieving, feeling, and healing. You cannot heal what you don't feel. Don't medicate grief. You know, I'm working with wonderful residents at the medical school. And that's what they told me just a couple of days ago. We do not medicate grief. It's a natural reaction to a loss. So don't try to feel better, get better. Mm. Get better and get out of the concentration camp that you created in your own mind, and the key is in your pocket. And maybe this is a good time to do that. It's the end of the year. What you're going to hold on to, and the Jewish people have Shiva, and that is so great. And after 1 year, they say, leave the dead alone. I don't run anymore from the past. When I have a feeling, I welcome it. I legitimize the feeling and then decide how long will I hold on to that feeling. Take back your power. Don't react, respond.
You write about the rules. You have to learn very quickly in Auschwitz how to survive.
Yes.
And one of the things you mention, you say to survive is to transcend your own needs and commit yourself to someone or something outside of yourself.
That's what my sister was the pretty one in my family. And she looked at me and she said, how do I look? It's a typical Hungarian woman's question, by the way. We are quite vain and care a lot about the external. So I had a choice then, as you have a choice now. I like to bring the there and then to the here and now. I had a choice to tell my sister how she really looked, totally naked. The hair, of course, was totally taken. And then I realized that I became her mirror. And you know what I told her? Magda, you have such beautiful eyes. And I didn't see it when you had your hair all over the place. Find a way to find the gift in everything. And Auschwitz was an opportunity to discover our inner resources. And now I realize what my ballet master told me about finding the love inside and to be able to hopefully change hopelessness to hope. And I said to myself, if I survive, I'm going to see my boyfriend tomorrow, because he told me I have beautiful eyes and beautiful hands, and we were Zionists, and we were going to go to Palestine. We had meaning in our lives. We had purpose in our existence. Today I ask young people, even when they ask me, where should I go? I graduated from college and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I tell parents, see to it that your child becomes emotionally and financially independent. So my definition of love is the ability to let go. Spoiled children died in Auschwitz. They were waiting for someone else to come. If you're a good parent, ask yourself what is best for my child, rather than taking care of your selfish needs and living your life vicariously through your children.
There are many things, many stories, many moments you share in the book about your time in Auschwitz. There's one particular moment, I think it's during the death marches, when, you know, your courage is being tested like it hasn't been tested up until that point. And there comes a moment where your sister is telling you that she can't continue, she can't live, she is so hungry. And almost without thinking, you leave that barrack and you climb over a wall into someone's garden and you pick these fresh carrots. Yes. And you come back and you give them to your sister. I mean, that is absolutely incredible risk on your part. They could so easily have killed you. What enables a human being to take such risk? And number two, do people take similar risks today? Can it be applied today?
Yeah. By the way, you're a most brilliant interviewer. Thank you for asking me. And risk is my best four-letter word. So if I tell you after this, I really would like to get to know you. I hope you want to get to know me, Edith, not Dr. Eger. And you tell me, you know, I'm very respectful to you, but, you know, I really don't want to get to know you. So what happened? I asked what I wanted and I didn't get it. Now, which God said that you should get what you want, when you want it, how you want it, but you were not rejecting me, because no one rejects me but me. It's okay to be disappointed. Don't get discouraged. It's okay to be angry, but don't allow it to lead to resentment. I think it's still very important, the way you interpret the stimulus and the way you realize that no one can define me. I am God's one-of-a-kind, precious, special, child. So the more dependent you are, the more depressed you're going to be. Dependency breeds depression. So you can be too dependent, too independent. It's better to be interdependent. That I'm a whole person, W-H-O-L-E, and I'm going to do what is age appropriate. The brain doesn't develop until you're 25. So don't try to talk to a 10-year-old and say, you know, you probably have cognitive dissonance. They never heard of that word. So what you want to do is meet the person where they are, but treat them the way you want them to be. And that's what we had to do also with each other. And all we had was each other then, and all we have is each other now. How did you become a rabbi? How? Because you had a calling. See, this is not your job. This is not my job. This is my calling. If you call me 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have that sometimes, people don't realize the time change. And I say, would you please call me in 4 more hours and so on. I think it's very important for us to acknowledge that the most obnoxious person is our best teacher. What you don't like in someone else, find it in you. And that's what happened when I worked with a young man who was part of the white supremacy group. He joined someone called David Koresh in Texas many, many years ago. And he told me, Waco, Texas, that's right. He was bombed after. But he told me, hey, Doc, it's time for America to be white again. And I'm going to kill all the Jews. And then all the, using the N-word, and all the Mexicans and all the Chincos. If I would have reacted, I would have dragged this boy into the corner. I would step on him and tell him, who do you think you're talking to? I saw my mother going to the gas chamber. But people don't come to me, they're sent to me. So I asked God, what's the meaning of that? And God said, find the bigot in you. And I said, that's impossible. I came to America penniless in 1949. I didn't speak a word of English. I worked in a factory. And when I went to the bathroom, one of them said, colored. After Nazi Germany and communist Russia, I come to America finding democracy. And this is what I see. Prejudice means to prejudge. I joined the NAACP. I marched with Martin Luther King in 1963 in Washington, D.C., singing with the mamas and the papas way before you were born. You see, love is not what you feel, it's what you do. And today I do everything in my power that we can empower each other with our differences.
You write about Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
And having a profound impact on your life. I must say, I have relatives in Dallas, and I met someone there who knew Viktor Frankl. Yes. And he told me as a young boy to read that book.
I was with him. I did the keynote address for his 90th birthday in Dallas, Texas.
Wow, yes. Wow. To tell us about that relationship, and in particular, what was most inspirational about his teachings, and why do you think you especially, you in particular, connected with him in such a profound way?
Someone gave me the book, Man's Search for Meaning, and I took it home, and it was late, and I started to read it. And I don't know if you ever read a book that you wanted to write 10 more pages. And I said, finally, someone gave me the verbal capacity, because I didn't want to tell anyone about Auschwitz. I didn't want you to feel sorry for me. I just wanted to be a Yankee Doodle Dandy. I wouldn't do that today, but we were very poor. I worked in a factory, and my husband ended up in a TB hospital, and I became the breadwinner. So I went totally underground. So I wrote an article, Viktor Frankl and me, little old me, and someone sent it to him to Vienna. So one day I get a letter. I wish I had that letter. He wants to meet me in San Diego at the International University, where he's giving a course on man's search for meaning. And that was in the 70s sometime. And I became a diplomate in logotherapy. You know, logo means meaning in Greek. And I am finding that many people don't suffer from clinical depression. They have a kind of a state in their lives that they don't have any meaning and purpose in their own lives. And that is very, very important to really see philosophically how people many times don't say what now, but they say why me. And they stay in a victim's position, life or death, either or. And so that's why my relationship with Viktor Frankl also has such meaning, because my colleague, Philip Zimbardo, who wrote the foreword in The Choice, said to me, write a book, Edith, write a book. I said, I have nothing to say. I kept saying, I have nothing to say. And he said, I tell you what, the survivors who are famous are all men. We need a female voice. So my choice is a female voice of Viktor Frankl. But Viktor Frankl won his studies in Auschwitz when I was 16, and yet we used the same thing. We checked out. He checked out and pretended that he's in a Viennese lecture hall lecturing about the psychology of the concentration camp. And I said, I too closed my eyes and pretended that the music was Tchaikovsky, and I was dancing the Romeo and Juliet. And this is what happens many times, that we check out. And that's why it's important to really, hopefully, go through the ages and stages of development. I've been teaching psychology, and I studied people like Piaget, how important it is. But many times, if you're a child of a survivor, you grow up very fast. Because when you come to another country, the child learns English much faster. The child learns how to take you to the grocery store and buy peanut butter or tuna fish or things I've never seen in my life. My 2-year-old child did that. She taught me how to speak English. So she came back one day and she said, you have to buy a turkey because Thanksgiving is coming up. I didn't know what turkey was or Thanksgiving was, but I knew I was too poor. And I never told my daughter I was poor. I went to the grocery store in Baltimore, Maryland, called Schreiber's, and I found the smallest little chicken. And I went to the guy, and he took out 25 cents and 4 pennies for 29 cents. I went home, which was a maid's room in someone's backyard, and I did my choreography, and I did my high kick, and I guess what? We're gonna have a baby turkey. So you see, she didn't know we were poor. It's no yes, but yes, and yes, I still have choices. when cannibalism broke out in Gunskirchen and people were eating other people's flesh, I asked people to see the movie, The Sound of Music. I didn't want to touch human flesh. And I asked God, and God told me, just look down. And you see in the movie, I still had grass to eat. And I remember I was in Israel and talking to someone, and I told them that I can't is not in my vocabulary, because even then I chose one blade of grass over against the other. I can't is not in my vocabulary. I can. Why? Because I think I can. What you think, you create. That is science.
Beautiful. One of the things you write in the context of your relationship with Viktor Frankl and summing up the teachings as you saw it, you write, it does not really matter what we expect from life, but rather what life expects from us. Now, obviously that's very, this is not conventional wisdom, because obviously you're turning the whole thing on its head. Most people come at life in a more selfish way. But my question is, how does one ever know what life expects from us?
I like to think that there is a sixth sense that is within me. And some of us are old souls at a very early age, that you're not smart, but you're wise. And you're able to know that every behavior has a consequence. So when you ask a child, why do you do that? The child would say, because I feel like it. They don't care about the consequences. If I like the chocolate cake, I'm gonna eat it. So I think it's very important to find the parent within us that asks, is this really good for me? Is it going to empower me or deplete me? Am I stronger with that than without that? So Jewish people have 3 people and 15 opinions, you know, that we all have our truth, but I don't have a truth for you. I'm only right for me. So give up the need to be right, because the only one you are right is for you. Don't come with an agenda, and don't try to change a person, because the only one you can change is you. So the most obnoxious person, I repeat, and that's what I did with a 14-year-old. I looked at that bigot in me, and I treated him as if he were someone who feels in a safe place and feel any feelings without the fear of being judged. And I said, tell me more. Love is time, T-I-M-E, time. So don't ask how are you, it's the stupidest thing you can do. People say fine, when they're not. Just say, I do that. Geez, good to see you, I missed you. I create an environment here because you know that whatever you tell me stays right here. I never talk about anyone who's not here. It's gossip. So I am very, very careful not to ask questions and not to give advice. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do the other? No. But I say, what if you choose this? Every behavior has a consequence, not punishment, consequence. And that's how I write a constitution for a family. There is no freedom without responsibility. It's anarchy. just like the Chinese laundryman, no tiki, no washing. You know, there is no freedom in this family. And I teach you how to put this into the dishwasher, and it has to be age appropriate.
Mm.
That we work as a team, and that's what we had to do in Auschwitz.
You write that your purpose, your calling, which is perhaps the meaning that you found in your life, was to heal so that I could heal others, and to heal others so that I could heal myself. I just want to say before I ask you the question, this echoes a beautiful quote from Hillel, the great Talmudic sage from Pirkei Avot. We learned as a child, if I am not for myself, who will be? If I am only for myself, what am I? Which means we need both. They complement each other. Yeah. But you've written it, you put it so beautifully. Let me ask you something. What comes first? And is there a priority? Is one more important than the other? Or is it like a circle that never ends?
I usually ask people, are you revolving or are you evolving? And that's why, I have a butterfly that I like the idea of the ages and the stages of development, but then you have to shed the chrysalis so you can fly freely like a butterfly. And the butterfly doesn't fly right away. I studied it. They rehearse at least 50 times before they go. I think it's important to get to know a person. I beg couples not to sexualize your emotionality. And don't start a relationship by crawling in bed. Get to know each other at least 3-4 months and see how you can empower each other. You ask yourself, am I stronger with this person? Am I depleted with this person? Take your temperature. Do I feel soft and warm or cold and stiff? So you see, the more you wait for someone to make you happy, you're never going to be happy. And I repeat, self-love, it's where it begins. There is something between birth and death called life. And the lifetime is to have more life. Don't do anything in excess.
You mentioned relationships.
Yes.
And obviously, we have a lot of young people listening to this show tonight. You say sometimes the emptiness that people find in a relationship is not necessarily a sign that something's wrong in the relationship. It's more the emptiness that they feel in themselves. Yeah. And because they're not whole themselves, therefore the relationship suffers as a result.
Yeah, that's why it's very, very important to be a whole person in your own right. And when you are a teenager, the bottom line of a teenager is, you're not going to make me. And so find that part in you. And maybe when you are in a classroom, pay attention to your teacher, because your teacher needs you. And to be able to really talk to yourself and see how you can become a WHOLE person. And remember, your brain doesn't develop until you're 25. So it's very good to become a compassionate listener when you are with someone and see how you can go through the ages and stages of development. We survivors came home and we wanted to be normal. We didn't know. We didn't know what was normal, because when we were liberated, many people went through the gate and then after a while would come back and sit down. The wonderful positive psychologist Seligman talks about learned helplessness. And I was very active building transitional living centers for battered wives. See, my life does not start or end in Auschwitz. People say, She's a Holocaust survivor. I'm a human being who went through an experience, but it's not my identity. It's not who I am. It's what was done to me. And that's very important, not to really fall into that victim's mentality, because you're always going to find a victimizer. And that's what happens many times in marriage. The victim becomes the victimizer, and they go flip-flop back and forth, back and forth. You made me do that. You made me angry. No, nobody makes me angry. You have as much power over me as I allow you. So it's good to think about your thinking, because what you think, you create. Your feelings comes from your thoughts. People say, I feel like going downtown and I feel like taking care of my errands. That's not a feeling, that's a thought. It's very important not to mix thoughts with feelings. You're either mad or glad or sad or scared. There are not too many feelings, but people run away from feelings. They medicate the feeling. They talk about the feeling rather than feeling the feeling.
Dr. Eger, there's so much more we can say and ask and talk, and certainly lots of people here who have a lot of questions. I just want to say and conclude on a few points. I'm a student of Chabad Hasidic teachings, and your experiences and your insights and your stories crystallize for me a lot of the teachings that are a little ethereal, a little abstract, but obviously you have, shone a light on these ideas through precisely because you have had such challenging experiences in your life. You mentioned before the desert, the Jewish people's journey in the desert. So the Baal Shem Tov asks a question. He says, in the verse, it says there were 42 journeys the Jewish people took out of Egypt. And he says it's not 42 journeys they took out of Egypt. It was really only one. They left Egypt and went to their first destination. And he explains that physically, yes, you can leave in one journey from Egypt. But internally, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it takes many, many more journeys to leave Egypt. In fact, it's 42, he says, which is journeys that we all go through to try and find liberation for ourselves. So in listening to your story and reading your books, what is so fascinating is the twists and turns and the intricate steps of that journey, which really only through those journeys do you experience that liberation. You're listening to you and talking to you, you're a liberated person. You're a free individual, and we all are inspired, and please God will aspire to find the courage and the wisdom that you share.
Thank you. Let me tell you, after two beautiful girls, my son was born, and my husband was so proud because his great-grandfather was Rabbi Akiva Eger.
Wow.
Yeah, there is a street even in Jerusalem. But my son did not develop the same way as my girls did. He didn't sit up, he didn't walk, he didn't talk. I was told by 5 doctors that I have to prepare my son to go to a school for retarded children. We don't use that word anymore. I say, where do I get a second opinion? They send me to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. A beautiful neurologist told me after a week, your son looks retarded, but he's gonna be what you make of him. He's gonna need speech therapy, occupational therapy, and then he'll do anything everybody else does, but it's gonna take him longer to get there. How much do I owe you? $10 in 1960. I went home, I dropped out of school, and my son John graduated as a top 10 student from the University of Texas and Chabad. And I have a love affair because they take care of my son.
Wow.
They take everyone, irregardless, color, anything. So that's why you and I were meant to be. It was shared. We have a love affair going. So congratulations. And I am your mama. You can call me anytime. And I'm going to let you know that you may have the desire to do something, but I'm not going to allow you to act upon it ever. Things like that. See, I'm a very no-nonsense mother.
Let me just...
Temptation. God gave us temptation. Why? To practice the freedom of choice. You can quote me on that. And there is no forgiveness without rage. Don't cover garlic with chocolate. Doesn't taste good. Got to go through the rage. You got to go through the valley of the shadow of death. Just don't get stuck in there.
Wow.
When you're stuck, you're constipated. And when you're constipated, concentrate on a movement. So you try the evolving, not revolving.
Dr. Eger, we thank you so much for that insight and courage and so much wisdom. There's a lot of homework for us to do in processing and internalizing and applying those beautiful experiences. I just want to conclude with another line from your book. You see, I read it and there's a lot of stuff there that will take me a long time.
By the way, before I forget, I was asked to write a recipe for a Hungarian crepe called palacsinta, and it's in Jerusalem now for the now Hanukkah is coming, and they were asking for something. Recipe. It's called palacsinta, and it's my daughter and I who made it. So you can find it in Jerusalem.
Yeah, we'll find it and we'll share that recipe with our viewers. In talking about Hanukkah, you have a beautiful line, and we can conclude on this, and that is, instead of focusing our attention on extinguishing the darkness, let us focus our attention on illuminating and sharing and spreading the light. So that is Hanukkah. We wish you a happy Hanukkah. We wish you health for many, many good years, and nachas from your children and grandchildren. And may you all share only good news, and let us spread the light until there is no more darkness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You find the light in the darkest places. You find love in the darkest places, and that's what Auschwitz was meant. All we had was each other then, and all we have is each other now. So the question is not why me, but what now?
Dr. Eger, thank you so much. Wishing you a good evening and a happy Hanukkah. Thank you.
Same to you.
Thank you.
It was a great interview.
This was my best. Thank you. We'll be in touch, no doubt.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.